Hello and welcome to the last mixtape. My name's Stephen White, and on this week's show, we delve into Kneecap's performance at Coachella 2025 and why it matters, and the latest music from the week that was. But first, artists are here to disturb the peace. They have to disturb the peace. Otherwise, chaos. Not my words, but the words of James Baldwin. Why, dear listener, and indeed, dear viewer, am I quoting American writer and activist James Baldwin at the top of this week's show? Well, this week I thought we'd delve into Kneecap and their performance at Coachella 2025. Indeed, this is a story about protest, a rap group from Belfast, a genocide in Gaza, and what happens when you speak truth on a stage built to avoid discomfort. Kneecap didn't just perform at Coachella, they interrupted it. During their second set at the festival, the backdrop behind them flashed images that no sponsor or PR team would have approved. Israel is committing genocide against the Palestinian people. It is being enabled by the US government, who armed and fund Israel despite their war crimes. Fuck Israel, free Palestine. On stage, they led the crowd in chants of free Palestine. It was raw, it was loud, and it was absolutely deliberate. Let's get this out of the way early. These statements weren't about demonising people or their religion. They are aimed at governments, at state violence, at genocide, at collectivised punishment. It's protest, not hate. And protest music was never supposed to be polite. Coachella is a controlled environment. Vibes are curated, rebellion is styled. So when an artist shatters that reality, you see how fragile the illusion really is. The backlash came thick and fast, online and offline. Some called it dangerous, others called it anti-Semitic, despite the wording specifically being aimed at state and military institutions. But now it's gone even further. Counter-terrorism police in the UK have been called in to investigate Kneecap. Let that land. In a world where this performance happened on stage in another country as a sign of protest, it is now being treated as a threat to national security and terrorism itself, despite the myriad of videos and evidence online about what is happening in Gaza right now. Because in 2025, saying free Palestine with your chest out on stage as part of a performance in a country where free speech is supposed to be enshrined in their constitution can get you marked as an extremist and face consequences. And with that, Kneecap had to respond. The following is a statement from Kneecap released the day before recording this podcast. Since our statements at Coachella exposing the ongoing genocide against the Palestinian people, we have faced a coordinated smear campaign. For over a year, we have used our shows to call out the British and Irish government's complicity in war crimes. The recent attacks against us, largely emanating from the US, are based on deliberate distortions and falsehoods. We are taking action against several of these malicious efforts. Let us be clear. The reason Kneecap is being targeted is simple. We are telling the truth and our audience is growing. Those attacking us want to silence criticism of mass slaughter. They weaponise false accusations of anti-Semitism to distract, confuse and provide cover for genocide. We do not give a fuck what religion anyone practices. We know there are massive numbers of Jewish people outraged by this genocide, just as we are. What we care about is that governments of the countries we perform in are enabling some of the most horrific crimes of our lifetimes, and we will not stay silent. No media spin will change this. Our only concern is the Palestinian people, the 20,000 murdered children and counting. The young people at our gigs see through the lies. They stand on the side of humanity and justice, and that gives us great hope. Kneecap. And that's what protest looks like. Unfiltered and unwavering. Music festivals weren't always about brand sponsorship and brand awareness. Once they were counterculture, chaos and risk. Now they have been smoothened over to be inoffensive, built only for advertisement. Indeed, we have reached a point in the music industry where the worst thing you can do is tell the truth. And we need to ask, what is art if it avoids all discomfort? Because a stage that silences resistance and protest is not a stage worth standing on. The connection between Ireland and Palestine isn't new. It's built on shared memory of colonisation, displacement, control. Partition, occupation, military violence, the parallels are painfully familiar. For some Irish people, the Palestinian struggle isn't abstract. It's lived empathy, a recognition of shared trauma. And for Kneecap, who rap in Irish, who reference the Troubles, who question state narratives, Palestine isn't a trend, it's kin. Their message on stage at Coachella wasn't virtue signalling, it was solidarity. And this to me is where a lot of the hypocrisy lies in the response to Kneecap. This year and in previous years, we have seen both the music industry and the movie industry canonise moments and protest singers from the past. This year we've seen the release of A Complete Unknown, a movie about Bob Dylan, in which a scene where Bob sings Masters of War is created, where are seen with all of this reverence to the moment and his protest singing and what a rebel he was and all of this. And it's interesting that in the same year that happens, where actual protest happens on stage in America about a genocide happening in the Middle East, in Gaza, it's interesting that that is not treated in the same way. It's seen as dangerous. It's seen as potentially as seen as a threat to national security. It's seen as terrorism in some respects. And that to me is what's possibly the most interesting thing about it, is that we have kind of canonised this version of the past, the 1960s, the counterculture and all of these things, because it's safe. Protest in the past is preferable than protest in the present. It's the idea that somehow that is kind of clean, it's away from us, it's decades and decades ago, and to some people it's kind of almost, it could be about anything. Masters of War could be about anything. World War II, Vietnam, Cambodia, whatever you want to say. Whereas the reality of now, the reality of what is happening in Gaza, the reality of those deaths, the reality of collectivized punishment, the reality of what is a genocide is uncomfortable. And that people going to a music festival should be allowed to just be divorced from this discomfort. That music and art, or even the idea that art and politics or music and politics are unalloyed goods, that they're different, that they're separated from one another, which is completely against what decades and decades of music has had. And you see that creeping into the conversation. Well, should musicians be protesters, or should musicians be political? Should artists be political? Shouldn't they just shut up and sing the song? Shouldn't they just get up on stage and do what they do and just kind of everybody have a good time? And I think that's such a mission creep into kind of trying to slowly censor music and slowly censor art by kind of this kind of inference that, oh, well, you can't do this. And I think and there's so many great pieces written about this and so many great political pieces, and I would defer you to go to kind of more expertise people on the conflict and the war in Gaza and the genocide that can speak far better than I can. But the interesting thing to me about the Kneecap version of this, and we've spoken about Irish artists getting involved in this and the Irish relationship with this and the Irish point of view, us a country that can very much identify, as much as anyone can, I suppose, with the plight of the people in Gaza. And it's interesting that it's an Irish artist, an Irish act going up there, but the kind of idea that they in some way interrupted the advertisement, that Coachella is it's sponsorship, it's big, whether it's record label sponsorship with big huge moments and big productions and all of these things, or it's drink sponsorships, or it's the crowd, some people in the crowd, influencers selling sponsorships on Instagram or whatever it be, that in some way Kneecap interrupted the advertisement on stage. Now, Coachella have said that they were blindsided by what Kneecap did on stage, which I'm sorry, but I find that incredibly hard to believe when you know anything about them, especially in America. We can't even say, well, they didn't know in America because they don't know maybe as much about Kneecap. They didn't get up on that stage by chance. They weren't wandering around the back and somebody said, hey, do you want to get up on the Coachella stage? They are booked. Somebody booked them. Somebody knew who they were. Somebody knew who they were as a band and what they stood for. South by Southwest had happened in America. They were part of that protest. So I find that hard to believe that they didn't know, or somebody didn't know, at least, that this was going to be part of it. Fine, own that and say, yes, our stage is a space where people can protest, people can say something. The fact that Kneecap have been kind of demonized, and that, like, I mean, look, they're no fools. They would have known that was coming as well themselves. And the fact that people are having this conversation, the fact that that image was put up on that stage, and a lot of the talk about Coachella is about this. It is it working. It's, you know, it's the perfect example of, I hate the kind of the term, but using a platform. Well, they did, you know what I mean? They did do that to call out something that is happening in real time, something that maybe a lot of people feel helpless about, like, you know, regarding what to do about something like this. And I think having that is so important. We spoke about last year about the cultural relevance of Kneecap, and I've kind of felt that. I reviewed the album and I had my kind of thoughts on it, but there's no denying how culturally relevant they have become and how much they stand for a lot of what a lot of Irish people, not all, but a lot of what Irish people feel about this. You know, you also have Lancome doing it. We used to talk about Soda Blonde and people like this, all kind of standing up for this. And obviously people as well. We had the protests against the far right in Dundalk and stuff. And I think it's such a powerful moment. And it's just as well showing you how divorced the music industry, and I'm talking about the industry, the money-making side of things, is from the reality of art, or the meaning of art, or the artistic expression. That it is seen as this kind of, oh, well, you know, we need to investigate this kind of free speech and freedom of expression needs to be investigated just in case, you know. Whereas, and they rightfully said themselves, or I believe that their manager rightfully said when being interviewed on the radio, that nothing is, you know, like, you say this and they put up this sign on the stage, but within all this there are videos, there's numbers of deaths, it's there for the world to see, and that's not what people get upset about. And to me it's a real sign of the advertisement, or the mission creep, as I say, of the advertisement of music as an advertisement, festivals as an advertisement, the corporatization of music, that this is seen as a kind of a dangerous thing. I'm reminded of, I watched a video, and I bring him up quite a lot because I really like him, Josh Johnson, who's a comedian, American. He was speaking about the Super Bowl, and this is kind of equatable to what Kendrick was doing at the Super Bowl, a kind of a form of performance as protest. But the idea that a lot of the time, anything you see on television, or anything you hear, and I'm paraphrasing Josh Johnson here, anything you see on television, anything you read or whatever, is seen as, that you might think is counterculture, you might think is rebellious, or you might think is whatever. A lot of the time, in order for it to get from the medium to you, the audience, it's gone through lawyers, it's gone through corporations, it's gone through everybody. And in fact, what you think may be revolutionary or rebellious is in and of itself not that, because it's been planned or it's been baked into the response. I think this is one of those moments where that's not the case, where this is something that has slipped by and slipped into consciousness, and Kneecap have been able to do that, and they've again used their platform as a means to protest within, as I say, interrupting the great advert that is Coachella. The meaning of all this is that we love protest after the fact, through the lens of decades and decades ago. The idea that it's safer in the past, and we can feel good about ourselves when we look back at it and go, oh, how amazing we were back then, and how amazing we were on apartheid, or on the Vietnam War, or whatever you want to bring up, basically, in those means. But when it's now and it's in your face, it really does test the mettle of the music industry, and it does really test the mettle of people like Coachella, and it does test the mettle of the music media, and I think it says something regarding the reaction of the media and the reaction of things to Kneecap, that they stood up, and they, as I said, we read it at their statement, that they did not back down, they did not say it was a mistake or whatever, or nothing. It has to be commended, and as I say, protest is popular in the past, but protest needs to be just as popular in the present. Art isn't supposed to sit safely in a gallery. It's supposed to speak. And right now, when bombs fall and the cameras look away, perhaps art is the best form of communication. Kneecap said something real. There is a bigger question at play. What kind of artists do we want? Ones who perform, or ones who resist? Is it art, or is it entertainment? Because the music industry loves revolution, as long as it's wrapped in nostalgia, real protest still remains dangerous. And that's why Kneecap at Coachella 2025 really matters. Indeed, as James Baldwin says, artists are here to disturb the peace. And this year, at Coachella 2025, Kneecap did just that. But what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on the disruption of the advertisement that is Coachella? What are your thoughts on Kneecap? What are your thoughts on music and performance as a form of protest? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Let me know in the comments below. Yes, dear listener. They seek him here, they seek him there. Those musos seek him everywhere. Is he in heaven or is he at the disco? The damned elusive Count of Monte playlist. Yes, the style and profile limousine Ryan Jeff Lyon playlist making son of a gun has once again returned from the shores of Playlistia to bring you another beautiful bounty in the form of TLMT's Irish mixtape on Spotify. Indeed, whenever the moon and stars are set, whenever the wind is high, the Count of Monte playlisto comes riding by. For this week, we shall begin with Maria Somerville and her brand new album Luster, and a track from that, Violet. And indeed, I absolutely adore this album, and we will speak about it in greater depth perhaps next week. But it is an incredible sophomore release from Maria Somerville. Violet is a high point in what is an atmospherically washed album that ebbs and flows and moves with texture, and indeed Somerville's own voice and songwriting become part of the texture of the production and the album in itself. It is a thing of beauty, and it is getting its just desserts with quite a lot of attention all over the music industry and scene, and that is a good thing because Maria Somerville is an incredible songwriter. It's a beautiful album. Do take the time to check it out, but Violet is the track I have picked, and Violet is on the playlist. Up next we have Gag Reflex with their brand new single Man Enough. And indeed, this is an incredible track from Gag Reflex, a debut single from them as well. And it is incredibly well put together. It reminds me quite a bit, we're talking about some bands drawing from that alt rock of the 90s, drawing from that kind of scene. And this has a lot of it to me about mid-era Smashing Pumpkins, around about Melancholy of the Infinite Sadness, that kind of type thing. It plays that kind of darkened edges and gothic edges of the alt rock scene of the 90s so perfectly. And again, we're talking about very young bands coming out with, very early in their career with songs that are comparable in production and style and in songwriting to that kind of era and to that sound, which is incredibly hard to do if you think about the monumental scope and style of that. And this band really play with it. There's such great play with dynamics. There's, the vocal is exactly where it should be in terms of performance, in terms of style. It holds the centre whilst the band as well kind of play into that kind of push and pull and dynamic. The verses are a bit quieter, big into the choruses as well. And yeah, stylistically completely on point as well. And it's great to see bands just starting out really hitting the floor with these kind of sounds and these kind of styles. It's really cool. And yeah, you gotta give it a listen. It's Gag Reflex and their brand new single, Man Enough. It is on the playlist. Go check it out. Next we have Dream Boy with Ivory. And indeed, this is a new band to me. This is very new, and I absolutely adore this. We've been talking in recent weeks about the incredible dream pop, shoegaze, whatever you want to call it, scene that is happening in Ireland at the moment, and just the kind of the amount of great bands coming out of this. And Dream Boy have really entered in with their own kind of take on it, their own kind of sound, and Ivory is exactly that. We were talking about just there about Gag Reflex, playing into that 90s alt rock Smashing Pumpkins feel. Well, this plays into that dream pop sound absolutely perfectly. They get the genre, they get the sound, they get the style. There's enough about the texture and the voice and the songwriting. It's also relatively to the genre and quite a short track as well that really plays into it. And it's just so beautifully produced and beautifully done. You have to just delve into music like this. It has to give you depth. It has to give you something new almost in every listen to it. It's quite hypnotic. And I think these guys absolutely nail it with this. Again, another band just beginning, just starting out, and already so far along. It's absolutely incredible to see this generation of Irish artists and artists across the world really nailing it in terms of what they're trying to do and what they're trying to portray. Yeah, they're already kind of starting out the gate really well, and I think this is an incredible track. That is why the Count of Monte playlisto has chosen it. It's on the playlist. Check it out. Next up on the Count of Monte playlisto's playlist, we have Dose and their brand new single, After This. And indeed, yeah, right back in. We have kind of a theme happening this week with bands really kind of nailing that kind of sound. And this one is a difficult one to nail because it's kind of raucous. It's noise rock adjacent. It's in and around that kind of area. And in that style and in that kind of feel and sound, you need to find a place for everything, that everything is heard in its way and has a defined kind of sense of self. And within this, it does. I really like the sound of this because it basically plays with those kind of tidal movements of music that a really good band and really good musicians are able to use that power and control as well, and put it into a song that really works. And I think these guys absolutely do it on this track. They really take that kind of raucous sound but play it with that in kind of inflection of maybe a bit of post-punk, a bit of noise rock and that kind of type of stuff, but make it their own and don't get overwhelmed by the engulfing kind of sound of themselves, and kind of produce something that is really, really cool. This is by Dose and it's called After This. Check it out on the playlist. And last but by no means least, on the Count of Monte playlist, we have April with our brand new single Puppy. And indeed, this is a really intimate and beautifully portrayed track. It plays with kind of small sounds and big sounds throughout, in order, kind of almost like we were talking about with Gag Reflex, that kind of feeling of the intimacy of the verse and the release of the chorus. And it is in that kind of dream pop world as well, you know, towards the kind of the bedroom pop type sound of things. It seems kind of very, and feels very handmade, feels very intimate, feels very of the artist, by the artist, through the artist. And indeed, it feels that way. And it is a really beautifully done track. There are moments that really make you smile in production. As I say, it keeps it small to begin with and then it builds it out, and you have these lovely harmonies. And of course, April takes centre stage as in vocally as well, because you need a strong vocal, and I don't mean strong as in Aretha Franklin. I'm talking about strong as in having a strong compulsion to listen to it, or having, you know, being pulled into it, being pulled into the world of the song. And a performer needs to do that in this type of genre, in this type of music. Sometimes has to hold the ground and keep the interest, and indeed she does with this track. It is beautifully done. It is called Puppy. It is by April. It is on the playlist. But dear listener, and indeed dear viewer, the Count of Monte playlist has once again delivered another beautiful bounty in terms of the Last Mixtape podcast and indeed playlist and new tracks in the Irish music scene. But as always, as the Count always tells you, dear listener, don't be bound by geographical location. Don't be bound by your own perceptions of genre. Listen to whatever music, whenever, however you want to. It's out there. It is art. It is for consumption. It is for you to listen to and enjoy and question and delve into and do all of those types of cool things. The songs chosen on this week's playlist are just a handful of songs that have been released this week, and I'm sure your favourite artist is waiting for you somewhere there, maybe within the playlist, maybe outside of it. But for now, dear listener, the best there is, the best there was, and the best there ever will be, the king, indeed, of playlisting has once again returned and signed a contract, much like Virgil van Dijk, the Colossus of Anfield, and much like future champions Liverpool. The Count of Monte Playlisto has been victorious over all comers and remains the greatest playlister of all time. Check back next week for more picks from The Count. And so it goes, and there it went. But before I go, thank you for watching and listening to The Last Mixtape. To help the channel grow, please like, share and subscribe for more episodes like this. And if you want to send your music on to the Count of Monte Playlisto, do send them on to stephen@thelastmixtape.com and I will send him on your correspondences. But for now, that was The Last Mixtape. I was Stephen White. You were the listener and the viewer. Hey, so long.